If you would have told me 8 years ago that we would have a song that was over 4 minutes, I probably would have assumed you were lying.
Welcome to the Dreams of Conscious podcast. If the two of you would be so kind, would you mind introducing yourselves?
How's it going? I'm Matt from Wraith. I play guitar and sing in the band.
I'm Mike, play drums for Wraith.
And guys, how would you describe the music of Wraith?
Mike, you go ahead and answer that one.
Oh, man. I feel like we've talked about this a lot recently, and there's a whole lot of things that could be said, but I think ultimately a blackened combination of thrash metal and punk rock. That's kind of the common ground between all of the members, and it seems to be where our focus lies there.
Matt, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's pretty much spot on. We actually just did like a quick interview when we were in Salt Lake City 2 days ago, right? Yeah, 2 days ago. That was kind of like a radio show / podcast all about our influences. So we kind of spent a lot of time, I think, breaking it down. And that was probably what the Mike's description is the most concise. I think it really is just kind of a blackened blend of thrash metal and punk rock.
Cool. And if I'm not mistaken, this started off as a solo project. Is that correct?
Yeah, it did. So I actually started the band by myself in 2016 and wrote the first batch of songs and then recruited Mike to kind of join in and play drums for some of that stuff. And we ended up writing a few more and getting another buddy to play bass. So that kind of was the original inception of the band. It was just the three of us. And then we recorded those songs and kind of kept things moving. Then Chris joined in 2017. He was with us all the way through our latest record. He actually just left the band kind of recently, but it's a no hard feeling situation. It just wasn't right for him anymore. So he decided to step away. And we brought in Our other buddy, Mike, who has been helping out with playing with us for the live shows, but me, Mike, and the new fill-in bass player have a lot of history together. So not too many lineup changes, but it's just kind of evolved over time, even with the addition of Jason as a live member and then kind of becoming the second guitar player for the band. Just been pretty consistent.
Now, have the two of you been in a band before? A band together before?
Yeah, we have. Mike, do you want to talk about the old band?
Yeah, so Matt and I were in a previous thrash metal band called Headlock. Honestly, kind of in the same vein of Wraith, a lot of the same elements. I think the way we describe Wraith, or at least I do, is that it's just a little bit more polished, and I think in a way like more mature. It's just, we started, or Matt started that band a little later down the road when, we had a little more experience under our belts. Maybe our writing process was a little bit better than in our younger years. But yeah, so that was the band Matt and I were in together. Also joined by Mike Drish, which is our new fill-in bass player essentially for right now. So like Matt said, we all kind of have a history together of playing music. We just have gotten together to jam plenty of times, playing covers and all kinds of stuff in the past. So a lot of musical history, and I think just all of us being kind of good friends that have been around each other since the high school days, it really kind of shows. It just makes it a lot easier being cohesive with the writing process and just overall just having the flow of working together in a musical environment.
Now, as far as the style of Wraith, this mix of black metal, thrash metal, and punk rock, was it always the intention for Wraith to be in this style?
I mean, I don't know. I think it's like, as somebody that creates stuff, I don't think I sat down and said, like, I'm going to make it sound like this. I guess organically that is just the way it sounds. I mean, it makes sense based on the influences, but I don't think that I necessarily had like a plan, to make sure that it sounded any certain way. I think that's kind of the way it's developed over time. I mean, I certainly don't mind it. Those are three genres of metal that I certainly like a lot. So I think it's a great combination of those three. But I do feel like we often get asked, is that the intent? And I would say, truthfully, there really wasn't any intent when it started. It just was fun, and the songs kind of came out naturally. And then organically over, 8 years or whatever it's been now, it's just kind of, that's the natural course it's taken.
I think if you listen to our discography in chronological order, I think you can just see kind of the natural evolution. I think it's safe to say that when Matt wrote the first initial batch of, I think it was 4 songs or so, it was definitely more heavily reliant on his punk rock roots. And with the addition of a couple members here and there, and maybe even just our writing style, or just us evolving over time, it's definitely gotten a little bit more polished, and I don't want to say more technical, but I guess in a way it has. I think, there was never, I don't know, I can't speak on Matt's behalf other than what he just said, as far as there wasn't really an intent on what it was supposed to sound like or what it would eventually sound like. I think we all just have taken it as things have come, and we don't really, I think it's safe to say we want to stick to that general style, but we don't really put too many limitations on it, so to speak, because there's definitely been a couple, I guess, just even the past couple releases are miles ahead, I would say, of our first couple releases, and I think it shows just over time here.
And we can talk about that evolution in more depth when we speak about this latest album. But it sounds like, Matt, for you, it's quite natural to write in this style, this kind of early 80s speed metal style.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that is like the music. That's what I like the most, and I don't have any other bands like going at the moment. And I think I've kind of said before too, like Wraith is really, it just satisfies all of the things that I'm looking for when it comes to music. So for me, like it just makes the most sense to write songs that sound that way. I always try to write the music that ultimately I would want to listen to. So it's my preferred style of music to listen to. So I think naturally that just becomes my preferred style to write.
So I just turned 45 a month ago, which means that I was, I'm old enough to have listened to thrash the first time around. The big four were still extremely popular when I got into this music. And it's a little bit amazing to me, I'm assuming you guys are a lot younger than me, but it's a little bit amazing to me how many younger people and even kids, and when I say kids, I mean, kids in high school and sometimes even earlier, are still finding this music, early Metallica, early Slayer, stuff like that. And a lot of times I'll see them, wearing the same shirts, like the exact same Pushead shirts that I was wearing in high school when I was their age. Do you have any insight to the appeal of thrash metal, especially that early stuff? Like, why do you think it's lasted as long as it has?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm in my mid-30s, so I guess, I was born and kind of grew up in the 90s and early 2000s. So I would say it really wasn't all that old when I found it, as like a 11 or so year old kid. It's not like it had been like, certainly wasn't my dad's music, that was 60s and 70s music. So it was just kind of right in between. It was like everybody's cool older brother listened to that stuff, which I think made it appealing. But I also think it's just kind of the natural progression, at least for me personally, from punk rock. I liked punk first. I liked the intensity and like the attitude in which they played. But sometimes I think the musicianship and production quality wasn't always there. But then you hear records like Kill 'Em All or Show No Mercy, Venom, even the Motorhead stuff, which is kind of a bridgy band. Like they're playing with that same intensity and attitude, but it just sounded better to me. I think sonically it was more appealing. The riffs were a little bit tighter. You introduced some of that palm muting or even like some of those gallops and stuff. So I think I just found it because I loved punk, but I wasn't completely satisfied. And there's still punk records and bands that I hold in extremely high regard. But for me, I think I found the thrash metal just because it was the next thing. It was like the music I liked just turned up a little bit.
Mike, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, I feel like when we do these types of things, when we start answering these questions, we all have a lot of the same answers. I think just adding to that, though, same thing for me. My introduction into like, I don't know, I guess underground music or more so underground music was punk rock. Misfits quickly became my favorite band, the Ramones, all that classic old punk stuff. And then I think eventually I ended up, coming across, obviously Metallica was on the radio, some more underground stuff on like Headbangers Ball in the wee hours of the night, when I was in high school, like Anthrax or I think Machine Head, I don't know, just stuff that was headed more in the like extreme metal, thrash metal categories that, like to Matt's point, it was like, oh, okay, cool. This has the quickness, the intensity, but they're adding, breakdowns and palm muting, and it's still got all that stuff. And it was like the next level for me. And I felt like it just made a lot of sense. I think, as far as that stuff, that torch being carried, I guess it is exciting that there's still even younger folks than us in our 30s that are, coming out to shows and still representing like those bands that started out in the 80s. I think sometimes I think about it, and just with all the radio rock and the pop stuff that's like grabbing the attention of most people these days, sometimes it's kind of scary that this, thrash metal and punk and that kind of stuff sometimes might get buried for the average person. But I think it's safe to say that it's being carried on well, and I feel like it's timeless, and it probably won't ever go away.
Yeah. I mean, I just saw Forbidden last month at MDF, and it's crazy that, like, I mean, in the 90s, like, stuff like that wasn't particularly cool. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're somehow more relevant than ever. Like, I saw them play to God knows, like, how many thousands of people were there, but they fucking killed it. And it's kind of amazing to me as somebody who had to, like, suffer the cudgel of like the grunge years, and then the alt rock years, and that whole period when being a metalhead wasn't particularly cool or appreciated.
Sure.
So we touched on this a little bit, but can you guys tell me how a Wraith song starts?
It's always a riff for sure. I think the cool thing about the band and the members in the band is that everybody is extremely talented. So Mike, for instance, plays drums in Wraith, but he's a great guitar player and he writes a lot of riffs. So all of us have kind of like a riff bank or ideas on our phone. So most of the time we'll send the riffs kind of back and forth in the group chat and see what people think of it. More times than not, it's never a complete song. I would say very rarely is like something played for the group and then everybody agrees it's great, and then it becomes like the final version sounds just like the first version. Most of the time it's just that riff. We'll start talking about it. We bring it into the practice space, or like I had a little studio in my office where we demoed a lot of the songs for the new record. And then we just start working it out, start trying to figure out drum beats and transitions. If somebody else has a riff that they think matches that riff or a tweak we can make to it, we start kicking around ideas, but it's always very democratic. And then I would say once the loose structure of the song is like done and we more or less know what it's going to be, this is the part that's kind of weird, but I usually name it right away. So I have a whole list of potential song ideas and titles in my phone and my notes page. So if we like a song and we think it's going to be something we're going to put a little more work into, I'll try to give it a name based off like, the vibe, if it's heavy, fast, whatever, just so I feel like that always helps me write the lyrics. And it also, I think, kind of sets the tone early on in terms of taking the music seriously when we're writing it, because we're already calling it what ideally we'd like to call it by the time the record comes out. And I would say that's probably more or less the process. I don't know if I missed anything, Mike, that you want to toss in there.
No, not really. That once again, obviously we're doing the same thing and we're in the same part of the writing process, but that's pretty much it. I think one thing I guess I could add would be, if there's a riff or something or a general idea that we're kind of hung up on and it doesn't feel right, one thing for us is that we won't force it. We'll kind of shelf whatever we have, throw that in the catalog, throw it in our, voice memos or videos or whatever it is on our phone. And there's been instances where we've revisited something that we started writing like 2-3 years ago, I think. And then it ends up I think we did that with Born to Die on Undo the Chains, and probably something else more recently too.
Vulture, right?
Yeah, Vulture.
Vulture was supposed to be on an old record.
Yeah, Vulture was a song that Jason actually started writing. Same thing, a couple of years ago. We couldn't really find a place for it in the current album. We didn't really have a complete song. We were kind of tied up on where to go next or where the transitions would be. And then eventually we kind of started working on it again, and it just kind of came to us. So yeah, that's one big thing is not to force anything. Don't want to like rush it and get frustrated or anything like that. Just take it as it comes, and just kind of capitalize when you do have those ideas flowing.
Of darkness, where demons dwell.
it sounds like most of the arranging happens in the rehearsal room. Do songs come together quickly at that point? I mean, it sounds like you guys like to keep things pretty straightforward and pretty punk rock as far as the arrangements go.
Yeah, I would say most of the time they do. Like, I mean, it's funny with creating anything, like to Mike's point about not forcing it, like sometimes it happens right away and other times we have to work at it for, a couple practices, and sometimes it just seems like they don't work at all and we shelve it for a while, and then for some reason a year later you dust them off and they work again. So I would say it's all pretty situational, but more times than not, I would say once we have an idea that we all feel strongly about, typically it comes together pretty quickly.
Yeah, I would say that's exactly it. Once again, it's like we're 9 times out of 10. I think we sometimes almost shock ourselves when it does come together as quickly as it does, because there will be times where we're just kind of, months go by and we're writing and we're, just thinking of ideas. And next thing you know, it's like, oh, shoot, we got like 9 songs recorded or demoed at least. And it's just like, I think it does flow fairly well, especially with the 3 or 4 people in the band that are all collaborating on this type of stuff. I don't think we let each other get in the way, and we all bounce ideas off of each other that always usually make it more streamlined and, I guess, able to wrap things up pretty quickly.
Matt, you said that you want, or the process for writing and arranging is democratic. As the guy who started the band, is it very important to you to include your band members' collaborations and ideas?
Oh yeah, I mean 100%. Like I definitely would never ever go as far at this point as saying that the band is mine. I think the initial idea was mine, but the band has evolved so much that it's collectively it's our band. It's very much everything, not just writing the songs. Everything is a democratic process. As much as we can have it, right? So in certain moments, a decision needs to be made, and I think all of us are comfortable and capable of making that decision, in the moment. But we do like to typically have a conversation about it, whether that's a show we're going to play, a merch idea, a record, a name, a riff. We all like to kind of get in the same room and make sure we have a discussion about it.
So at the time that we're having this conversation, you'll be releasing a new album at the end of the week called Fueled by Fear, which will be out through Prosthetic Records. We spoke a little bit about the evolution of the band over the years. How would you compare the music on Fueled by Fear to your earlier recordings?
I mean, I think it once again, the progression's been very natural, but I would say that Fueled by Fear is essentially all of the elements that Wraith as a band has demonstrated over the course of our discography. I think this is just it in its best form currently. That doesn't mean that it's like a ceiling or that it's always going to be the same exact way, but I would say that I think that this is what we collectively felt would be the best demonstration of what Wraith brings to the table, in 2024.
I think it's arguably the best production quality, or most likely the best production quality we have. Our musical talents are probably at the peak of where they have been, and all that being demonstrated by the thrash and black metal elements and punk elements. I feel like it all kind of shows through in one way or another on the 14 tracks on this one. There's a lot to choose from, and I feel like it brings together, all the styles that have been demonstrated over the years and all of our influences kind of combined here.
It seems like part of the evolution is the songs are getting a little bit longer. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have like a time requirement, but I mean, if you would have told me 8 years ago that we would have a song that was over 4 minutes, I probably would have assumed you were lying.
Why so?
It just wasn't where I think I was writing music at the time. It just wasn't. It's not that I ever said something has to be a certain time to begin with. I didn't write, for instance, the song World War and say, all right, this is going to be a minute and a half. I think I just wrote whatever I felt was necessary to get the point across. And as our musical abilities and kind of cohesiveness and tastes have evolved, so has the songwriting. So now sometimes that takes 3.5, 4 minutes. Sometimes we still do it effectively in a minute and a half. But I just think that's like one additional layer to the band, right? I think it's just another aspect of us and how we try to go about writing. I think even with guitar solos, it's not, we don't ever say that every song has to have a guitar solo. And sometimes, you know, we've tried to push it, and Jason is the guy to say, like, as a lead guitar player, like, no, this one doesn't need one. You know, I think it's cool the way it is. So I just think it's part of that kind of natural growth, I guess, as a band.
I think maybe arguably I'm the biggest proponent in the band of not having super long songs. I always joke around sometimes with Jason, and I tell him that I don't want no epics or no symphonies or nothing like that in the band. We're not Beethoven. And he's he's like a prog guy, and so he does have an outlet where he does have some songs that are upwards of 5, 6, 7 minutes. But I've kind of always stood in the realm of, I don't want to ever be on that level. But I guess in the same breath, I haven't necessarily felt the need to cap anything that we've written currently. I think a good example is, like, I technically wrote the title track "Fueled by Fear" on the album, and I think it clocks in over 4 minutes. But I think if I would have told myself, to Matt's point, I never sat down and said, I'm going to make this song and it's going to be 4.5 minutes. I just felt like, when it all came together, it had to be structured in that way to demonstrate, whether it be to fit Matt's lyrics or to get all the necessary parts off, the verses and the chorus and the hooks and, outro, or however you want to spin it. That's just kind of what ended up happening. And I still felt like it was, punchy enough and it didn't drag on and that type of thing. And there's been times too where we've trimmed things off if we realize, like, hey, we don't need to do that chorus, 4 times at the end of the song. It kind of loses the impact, or however you want to phrase it. But I think that's ultimately, we're not putting limitations on things necessarily, and we're just trying to write the song that it needs to be.
How much of the evolution would you attribute to you guys becoming better as musicians and maybe more comfortable with each other working together?
I think probably all of it. I think that's kind of the cool thing about being in a band with people that you are close to, or that you have friendships or relationships with outside of the band. Because I think as those relationships develop and grow, you start to trust the people more. Maybe a song that I wouldn't have shown them 4 years ago because I wasn't sure how it would go over, I would be comfortable showing them now. And I think, part of that growth is what helps the writing process, for sure. I think everybody just kind of got their guard down when we're talking about writing new stuff.
So I'll always joke around too. Matt mentioned I play guitar, and I write some of the riffs here and there and that type of thing. I've always kind of joked around that if it were up to me, I wouldn't even be playing drums in the band. I'd be playing third guitar or something, and we'd have someone else on drums, and we'd be looking like Iron Maiden up there.
Well, why not?
Well, it might happen one day. I don't know. If we ever find the right guy on drums, then guy or gal, I guess, then maybe that'll happen. But it kind of ties in with just being, friends at the end of the day too. I think we've always talked about it would be difficult to bring in a hired gun or someone that we didn't mesh well with on a personal level. So, but kind of going back to the initial point about me playing drums is that I eventually just kind of started to lean into it once I realized that, maybe I do have some value in this position, and I'm kind of realizing that it might be a pretty good fit for me. I don't know, not to toot my own horn or anything, but then from there, I think Matt and even Jason have pushed me in ways to maybe grab some new gear, try to really hone in on what can better our sound, gotten new gear over the years, new equipment, new techniques in the recording studio with our buddy CJ, who has recorded the last 3 or 4 albums, or pretty much everything we've done. So I think just ultimately, all of that stuff and just kind of collaborating with the people close to us has definitely built into the writing process and the evolution of the band over time.
So speaking of CJ, can you tell me where the album was recorded?
Yeah, we do it in my basement, actually. It's the same room that we practice in, or that we've kind of always practiced in. But he brings all of his equipment over here, and then we just kind of set up shop for a couple weeks. It's a really laid back process. We try not to push it too hard or make it too serious while we're doing it. Usually we'll have some beers and order, pizza or food or whatever. We'll play video games while the other guys are going. We'll kind of toss around ideas during takes. But I do think that even like that level of comfort adds to the outcome, I guess, is probably the best way to say it. I think if we had to sit maybe in like a studio or a place that we're not familiar with people that we didn't know very well, the music might not come across so naturally or like have that same feel. So it's like a nice perk to be able to do it in the same room that we like practice in and hang out in most of the time.
So as Mike mentioned, you guys have been working with CJ since almost the very beginning of the band. What do you like about working with him, and what would you say he brings to your sound?
I mean, CJ's, first of all, we've known him for a long time. He recorded some stuff for our old band Headlock, and he's a little bit younger than us, but he's just kind of always been willing. And I think he also takes it very seriously. He doesn't do a lot of recording. He does live sound for touring bands. So I think when he has the opportunity to work on a Wraith record, he treats it kind of the same way we treat it, where it's like, he'll buy some new stuff. He comes with new tricks. He's ready to, try to best himself or beat the way the last record sounded. And I also think that he's not a big like thrash fan, so he doesn't really care about the music the same way we do. So it's nice to almost have that objective opinion where he's just like, I think it would be cooler if it sounded like this, or maybe you could try doing it like that, as kind of an outsider's point of view. Plus, he's just really easy to work with. He delivers feedback really well. He's super, super, super level-headed, never gets worked up or mad or anything. Mike, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, but that's just kind of the vibe that I get when I work with him.
Yep. Same story. As he's a drummer as well. He's played in some bands over the years, and I think he keeps up with it outside of, normal life and doing the live sound and stuff like that. So he's always got a lot of helpful drumming techniques or just advice for me on, maybe do that again, hit the snare harder, do that again, maybe do a fill there instead of this, or things like that. And it's never in a way of like, this is wrong, or you're stupid, or whatever the case is. It's always very constructive criticism on his end. And I think that's something that I really respect, especially in an environment like that where you can really kind of feel under the pressure, especially for me. Sometimes I know going into it, I'm usually pretty calm and cool about it, but just being the first guy that's going into the studio and knowing that like the guitar and vocals and bass and all that stuff, that's all going to come after me. So it's going to be dependent on how quick I can get the drums done. And he's just always been super helpful with trying to like keep me focused and stuff like that. And yeah, I think it's been great working with him over the years.
Waiting for a
So a lot of your influences are rooted in an era, but production-wise, this doesn't sound like a throwback or retro album at all. Was it important to you to get a more modern sound for your albums?
Yeah, I think that there's like some people like the nostalgic aspect of having a record sound like it was recorded to tape or like it was done, in the studios from the, mid 80s to late 80s, I guess. But for me, the production, like I don't want it overly polished, but I want people to be able to listen to it at the same time or on a playlist as something else that's like modern or our contemporary, and not have the contrast be so stark that they don't want to listen to it again, or that you couldn't add it to a playlist with, a modern band and have it kind of mesh or blend well.
Mike, drum wise, is there anything that you want CJ to bring to the drum sound?
I think going into the last couple albums, mainly Fueled by Fear, the one coming out this Friday, and then the one before that, Undo the Chains, I think I'm not like super particular. I don't have a lot of I can't pick something out of, I don't have anything in my back pocket that says this is exactly what I want it to sound like. But I think we gave him a couple references over the years, or just kind of worked with, the initial tones of the drums on the album. And I know it's very vague, but just a punchy sound. I mean, punchy kick, a snappy snare, big beefy toms. I know it's very, like I said, vague, but ultimately I think he's really, outdone himself as far as like the evolution of the albums. I think what I was going to mention initially was that our old band Headlock, that we had a full length, and I actually recorded like a demo tape that we put out on my MacBook with, I believe, one microphone for everything. I recorded the whole drum set with one like condenser mic, and then the guitars with one microphone as well. At the time, we were very much so into like the DIY punk rock stuff. And, it was like, man, this is cool. And we didn't have to pay anybody. And this sounds good enough, But like listening back to that now kind of makes me feel really weird. And I definitely don't want, it's almost like I want to lean in the opposite direction and just, have that not crystal clear, but, a lot more impactful and just punchy sound as opposed to the fuzz everywhere.
So, as we mentioned, the album will be coming out on the 28th of June. I understand you guys have some tour dates coming up as well.
Yeah, so we're touring with Exciter, Midnight, and Hell Witch. I think just like 3 weeks, a little less than a month maybe, but we'll be all over most of North America. I know we're missing some markets, but I mean, the goal is to be back out again. We're certainly looking forward to it. I think having the album and, to be on a tour with bands like the ones that we're going to be playing with should be great for us. Hopefully people dig it. Hopefully we make lots of new fans and people can, get a chance to have a conversation with us or, grab some merchandise or new music.
So the bands that you're touring with, I mean, especially Exciter, I think talked about Forbidden and, how, those guys were kind of left behind in the 90s. You could probably say the same thing about Exciter. When you guys play shows and when you try to get on tours, are you looking for bands from that era or bands who have a little bit of that retro sound like Midnight?
I don't think we're necessarily looking to capture an era at all. I think if it makes sense, it makes sense. And personally, we did a short leg of Exciter's last tour, and man, I don't know. I just feel like it's one of those things, not to be, cliche or anything, but like it's all metal, right? I mean, they might be older than us and more experienced or whatever, but at the end of the day, a band like Wraith and a band like Exciter, add in Midnight, Hell Witch, whoever else, I think, if it's all metal and it's all good, it doesn't matter to me what era they came from.
Yeah, same here. I think this tour especially, I couldn't be more pumped on. I think, part of me wants to say we got lucky, but the other part of me, and I think we really have worked a long time for this. We've been busting our butt and writing and trying to play the local shows and playing festivals and doing one-off dates, across the country and stuff like that. And we kind of became buddies with these couple bands over time. And it's just, I don't know, it's wild. It's going to be a crazy opportunity. And I think that, it's just kind of the start of what we're hoping to do in the future. You know, we've got some plans for next year as well.
Do you want to tease what those plans might be?
Oh, I don't know if I should say yet, right, Matt?
Yeah, not yet. Soon though. That gives you some incentive to follow us, right?
Right.
Cool. So by the time people hear this episode, Fueled by Fear will be out through Prosthetic Records. Matt and Mike, please tell everyone how they can order the album. What's the best way to get it?
Yeah, so I'd say our main source of that is going to be our own Bandcamp, which is also kind of like a joint effort with Prosthetic. They've got the pre-orders up available now, which is wraith219.bandcamp.com. It's also going to be available directly through Prosthetic Records, which would be shop.prostheticrecords.com. To be honest, I've also seen it on Amazon and various other retailers, I guess, online. Those would probably be the most direct and main sources. Our Bandcamp's also got, some other merch that we handle. Personally, Prosthetic has handled the record, the vinyl, and CDs. And we've also got the cassette releasing on Motorpunk Records. I'm not 100% certain off the link at the top of my head, but if you're into cassettes, it seems to be pretty popular still. Just probably do a quick search, Motorpunk Records. And same thing with all of our social media handles. It's going to be Wraith Thrash, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff.
The Motorpunk Records website is just motorpunkrecords.com, and it looks like their pre-order link is still available there for those cassette tapes if anybody's interested.
Do you want to say anything about the vinyl versions that Prosthetic is putting out?
We picked some really cool variants. I know not everybody likes the variants, but I think this time we chose the ones that we thought best represented the incredible album art. So we're really stoked about that. But to Mike's point about it being available, it seems like if you just search the record, somebody hopefully near you is going to have it. I found it on lots of other websites too. So we just really can't wait for it to be out.
Very cool. And does all the merch go through the Bandcamp page?
So currently the vinyl pre-orders and the CD pre-orders are handled by Prosthetic. It's kind of weird, to be honest, how it's set up. We both have access to the Bandcamp. All the other merch outside of that, so T-shirts, old CDs, old cassettes, koozies, random odds and ends that we have is up on the Bandcamp there, and I am the one that's kind of managing that kind of stuff. So it's all available, though, on that wraith219.bandcamp.com.
Very cool. Is there anything else you guys want to say?
No, thanks for the support from everybody. If you're listening to this, appreciate you guys tuning in to check it out. I know it goes without saying, but without people, coming to shows and buying T-shirts and ordering records and creating a demand for the music, it would be hard to keep doing it. But we currently have all that support, so just kind of always eternally grateful for everybody that, kind of gives a shit about it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity and having us on here, and really appreciate the support and everyone being able to listen to this kind of stuff, maybe gain some new fans or just, current folks out there just hearing the process and hearing about our story as far as how everything comes together. And I think it's just a great outlet to have. And yeah, I really appreciate you.
Thank you, guys.
When the end is near, he makes the